We spoke about how we should train, why we should train, the difference between men and women. Now, let's talk about recovery. This is another buzzword that is going around. What are your thoughts on how we should recover, and how do we recover differently as we age? What's your perspective as a doctor and as an athlete?
And as an athlete who's aging, I mean, let's be honest. So I think there's a lot of factors in here, and I speak to this, first of all, from my personal experience. So, as I mentioned, we did New York City Marathon number 20 this year, 39th marathon, and I want to keep going for a long time. What are the changes I've noticed in my own body? Well, first of all, I'm not as fast as I was, but I'm faster than I'll be in 10 years. And so I always try and keep my mind focused on appreciating the moment where I'm at. And I've also noticed that I'll be damned, I recover slower. And not only do I recover slower, my patients recover slower. The wild west of sports medicine at this point is recovery. We hear a lot about it. There's all kinds of things thrown at us. Recover with this formula, with this IV, with this light. And there's a lot of things in recovery which are really, really important. I want to focus on the first part of recovery, which doesn't get enough attention or priority, which is sleep. Sleep is essential for recovery, and after 50, sleeping consistently through the night becomes more challenging for people, as I can attest to. So what are some of the strategies you can think about to optimize your sleep? And the answer is that, first of all, you can read about sleep and think about sleep as an essential part of your own recovery. I talk to my patients about the importance of sleep. There was an interesting study looking, by the way, at the risk of having a significant knee injury correlated to sleep. And there was a statistically significant difference in people who had poor sleep quotients and their risk of injury. So it's not just something that makes you feel good. There's a lot of value in that, as well as enhancing your athletic performance and recovery. So things to optimize your sleep, limiting caffeine in the afternoon, limiting sugar, particularly in the evening, trying to get a few hours between when you eat and when you go to sleep, limiting blue light, screens within an hour of bed, trying to kind of make your sleeping area cool and dark, and minimizing stress before bed. Those are all things that can make a difference. And more importantly, now we have sleep scientists. One of the benefits of the pandemic is that certain types of health services like mental health or nutritional health or sleep that used to only be accessible in person now are accessible virtually, and there are ways to kind of analyze your sleep to get more information. But I think sleep is a big piece on recovery that needs a shout out at the top of this discussion.
It also clears out waste in the brain.
Yeah.
And there's so much research that suggests lack of sleep, it aids in cognitive decline. You're
spot on there. So the idea of sleep and something called amyloid formation, there was an interesting correlative study looking at the risk of developing dementia, Alzheimer's, and sleep deprivation, poor sleep patterns. And unfortunately, there is definitely some science suggesting that when you have poor sleep, you're at much higher risk for developing dementia, related to this concept of cleaning out your brain. So sleep is regenerative, and if you're somebody that's having problems sleeping, don't just quote unquote tough through it. Look for talking to somebody about getting solutions to improving your sleep quality. It'll make a big difference. And then inside your body, things like sleep can affect some of the cellular changes we see with recovery. At the beginning of our discussion, we talked about oxidative stress and free radical formation and some of the things that cause injury to tissues around your body. Now, there's some of these things that happen and will put you into a pro-inflammatory state. You just have higher levels of inflammatory change in your body. There's a test that we will get called the C-reactive protein, or CRP, which is a test to screen for circulating inflammatory changes in your body. That's part of the panel somebody will get if they're looking for some of these changes related to longevity. And some of the ways you can reduce your CRP include, hydration, sleep, routine exercise, as well as lessen your visceral fat, lessen your white fat, as we talked about earlier. Those can all be ways to reduce that inflammatory burden on your body, which does correlate to a lessened risk of disease. So I'd say sleep and lessening cellular damage, being mindful of that, are a couple of ways to think about that. And then finally, when you time your workouts also can make a difference. So not exercising too close before bed,
Which affects your sleep.
Which affects your sleep, which affects your recovery. So all these things are things to kind of think about, but getting a good sleep strategy as a big piece of your recovery is important. And then when it comes to your body, some of the newer things, cold therapy, cold plunges, there is some evidence that cold therapy, particularly in contact sport athletes, football players, rugby players, MMA, can potentially speed recovery. It certainly can't hurt to do that if you're into getting into a cold plunge. Some of my patients love it, some of them don't, and I think it's reasonable to do. I think the evidence is mixed on some of the new laser and light therapies, but again, that falls into the can't hurt medicine for me. If you want to try it and you want to go ahead and give it a whirl, I have no problem at all. As well as some compression therapies, again, probably somewhat subjective, things like massage guns, foam rollers, I'm a big proponent of, even more than stretching, both before and after exercise, as well as compression wear and compression gear. Again, probably somewhat subjective, but certainly good things to experiment with and try if you want to aid your recovery. But one thing that's definitely true is that as we get older, recovery is something we have to think about and figure out strategies to optimize our recovery. You can't just take it for granted because this is definitely something that changes as we age.
So how do you know when your body has fully recovered?
Well, again, I think when you know you've fully recovered is, first of all, about experience. One of the good things about getting older is you get smarter and you know how to listen to your body's cues and be respectful of when you got it, when you don't got it, when you kind of got it, and really cueing into doing that becomes really important. Now, there are some metrics, I talked about heart rate variability before, that may give us some concept, but I really do trust my patients to kind of get a sense of, if it feels like doing this thing is too much for that day, then listen to your body. Being a good body listener, I want to really stress that repetitive use injuries, or we used to call overuse injuries, happen when you're just looking at a goal on a paper on a screen and not listening to your body. Your body gives you cues. So paying attention to those cues is a big piece of this. And I think recovering, the better you recover, the better able you are to jump into your next workout. And by the way, we've talked about recovering the body. I also want to mention of nutritional recovery, making sure you get carbohydrate and some protein within about a half hour of your workout. I want to underscore as a big piece of recovery as well.
We know that at any age, the fitter you are, the better you age, and the slower your decline is for your physical and mental health. Does the opposite exist? Can you train too intensely? Is there such a thing? And is that detrimental to one's health?
Yeah, well, there's a curve that we look at for the optimal training zone for yourself. And that curve looks at kind of healthy training and then unhealthy training. And if you this curve called the J curve kind of looks at the idea of if you're training healthily versus if you're training unhealthily and how you don't want to cross over into an unhealthy way. Now, how do you know that? Well, you often want to talk to an exercise physiologist or somebody, to get exact numbers on that. But I think you can really cue into your own body. Am I fatigued? Does everything hurt? Am I exhausted? Am I getting nothing out of this workout? I think as a doctor, I definitely can see that. As an athlete, I can see that. I bet as a trainer, you can see that in your clients as well. Another really important thing I want to stress is to recognize the difference between healthy pain and unhealthy pain. Now, exercise, if you're doing it properly, should be uncomfortable, and you may be a little bit sore after exercise. So healthy pain is everything aches. Unhealthy pain is my knee hurts so much I can't bend my knee. My shoulder hurts so much I'm having trouble lifting my arm over my head. Unhealthy pain changes your mechanic of movement at any age, and you want to definitely get that checked out. Can you find that in your own clients?
Absolutely. I can always tell when one of my clients has been overtraining, especially if we're training together 4 times per week and they want to do extracurricular activities and they don't view that as training, they view that as socializing, and I have to tell them, no, if you are moving your body, you are overtraining, because then they come to my sessions and they can't give me what they normally would. So I definitely see that more often. People are getting addicted to it. They get the high of training, which is a great thing because they like to move, but there does come a point where you have to have a rest day, a full rest day of just sitting still.
I think the key is good body listener, and recovery changes with age, and you have to really prioritize recovery as part of your training strategy to get the most out of your body.
Is it ever too late to start training?
Well, I think the key here is no. I have a great video I play in some of my lectures of a woman who started strength training she started, she's in Texas, and she started using a cane and then a walker, and her friend who owned a gym said, I want you to come in here and start training with me. And at 90, she went into his gym and started strength training. And the video talks about how first she got rid of her walker and then she got rid of her cane. And she got rid of both. And it's an amazing video looking at 90. And the end quote in that video is, I guess 90 is a good age to start, which I loved. And so I think it's never too late to start. And that, in fact, if you've not done a lot, it's a great time to start thinking about it. And I think what I want people to think about is how do they pick a program that they will stick to? As you know, in the fitness industry, the first, January and February, the gym is jammed, and then it thins out by March. And so what are you going to do to stick with that? What will work for you? And, it's a different equation for everybody, but I think really important.
The role and different types of mindfulness, such as meditation, breath work, Qigong, are increasingly popular. And for the fitness-minded individual, they may be a little bit skeptical because they're not all scientifically proven. Would you say that some are more efficacious than others?
Yeah, so I initially was quite skeptical about the concept of mindfulness. It sounded kind of woo-woo, California, hippie, no offense, California.
I was gonna say, I definitely
except for
practice
you.
mindfulness.
Gotcha, I know. All right, no problem. But I was somewhat skeptical about it, and I thought that it was just kind of out there somewhat, and it didn't correlate to health. But as we get more information on the role of mindfulness, meditation, meditative breathing, and its effects on stress, anxiety, it's tremendously valuable. So increasingly, I'm talking to my patients about mindfulness as part of what they do. That may be in something like a yoga practice once or twice a week, but it may be in something like breathing exercises. And I think one of the best is the Navy SEAL box breathing, which anybody can really do. And let's do one real quick, just so do it. I'll talk and you breathe.
Am I going to pass out?
I hope not. All right, so you're gonna breathe in for the count of 4. Then you're gonna hold for a count of 4. Then you're gonna breathe out for a count of 4. You're gonna hold that for a count of 4. And one more time. In, hold, out, hold. And just doing that for several minutes a day, working on that 10, 15 minutes a day, it sounds so easy, but that's a medically and research derived way to reduce anxiety. And so before you start rushing to medications that have many side effects, some of these antidepressant, anti-anxiolytic medications have a number of side effects, including decreased libido. They're very difficult medically to get off these. Thinking about mindfulness, mindful breathing, meditation, natural ways to start thinking about reducing stress and anxiety in your life.
It also helps with sleep.
Yeah, definitely.
Getting to sleep. I do this before bed where I breathe in and I hold my breath, but my exhale is a little bit deeper. Mm-hmm. So when I exhale, I imagine I have a straw and I purse my lips together so that the exhales can come out a little bit more forcefully, and I'm a textbook overthinker, so
but that's
it
yogic
resets
breathing.
my
That's
mind.
exactly yogic breathing. That's super helpful. I think it's really interesting.